KPIs and metrics are common ground in companies in order to report on progress. Organizations that either have adopted or are in progress of adopting agile practices have strongly encouraged or even forced teams to work with story points. Story points are in this case serving the purpose of effort estimation and for progress tracking. Often other ways to estimate and plan aren't even considered, because story points are the obvious choice. It's agile after all. Or is it? Story points are often seen as the obvious way to determine the complexity of a product backlog. Teams also use them to determine their velocity. Velocity as in the amount of story points that a team can finish within a sprint. The sprint being your 2-weekly development cycle. In often cases, management dictates that story points must be used. Reasons are manyfold. An attempt for standardization, time tracking, measuring the team's performance, comparing teams. But what do story points really tell you? Let's say I intend to drive from Brussels to Antwerp to have a beer with a friend in his favorite bar. You also need to know that the distance from Brussels to Antwerp is 100 kilometers. Your car consumes 5 liters of gasoline per 100 kilometers. To conclude that I reached my destination, there might be 2 ways of looking at this. 1, I can either look at the kilometers I drove. 2, or I can look at the gasoline I consumed. The fact that I drove 100 kilometers is actually not a real indicator that I reached my destination. I might find myself in Ghent, 100 kilometers in the wrong direction. Or maybe I drove in circles, only to discover that I merely pumped 5 liters of gasoline in the atmosphere. The fact that I drove 100 kilometers is actually not a real indicator that I reached my destination. Let's say I intend to drive from Brussels to Antwerp. There's only one way to find out whether I arrived at my destination. That is to look outside and check whether I'm at the marketplace of Antwerp. However, in agile practices, we tend to measure delivery quite differently from our daily reflexes. All too often, agile delivery practices show an unrealistic reliance on burn-down charts to determine actual delivery. In this practice, capacity is measured on the ability to deliver story points. How is that different from deciding that I reached Antwerp based on the amount of gasoline I consumed? We advocate that capacity should be the capacity to deliver business value, meaning customer value if you will, not the capacity to consume development resources. This is not an argument against story points. Quite on the contrary. To continue on the metaphor, one can indeed deduct arrival in Antwerp based on the delivered kilometers or even the amount of consumed gasoline, as long as it is certain that one is driving in the right direction and following the optimal route. However, this assumption cannot be made. Teams are in effect on a product discovery journey. During this period, your team focuses on building the right thing, as opposed to building the thing right, which would be product delivery as opposed to product discovery. Product discovery is an agility foundational principle. Every 2 weeks you question and validate whether you actually delivered customer value by testing with real customers. In a business agile environment, you embrace this uncertainty in direction through sprint-based product discovery. Hence, measurements based on story points burn down does not allow teams to discover and respond to customer needs. In agile terms, this assumes an established process that inevitably brings every feature where it has to be. In such a situation, measuring consumption would indeed be a good practice. Most delivery teams are not at that level of maturity. Focusing on consumption merely gives the team the illusion to deliver, where in fact they are just very busy burning gasoline. Agile delivery is time-box delivery against regular checkpoints. At these checkpoints, we look outside to find out where we are. The delivery capacity is defined against these checkpoints. For instance, we should ask the teams the time to deliver X, and check this at regular intervals. This assumes that we define for each feature a lead time. Or in other words, the time they need to arrive in Antwerp. When that time is reached, we check and rejoice if we reach the target. Or alternatively, we adapt the lead time of the feature and update our delivery capacity accordingly. In other words, we use lead time as a unit of measure. Lead time being the measurement of how much time passes between task creation and when the work is completed. Measured lead time is a fair and transparent way to communicate around planning and capacity to deliver. It clearly defines the ability of the team to meet the expectations of the business. Going back to our example, where I was joining a friend in Antwerp for a drink, who is anxiously awaiting my arrival. If I tell him that I will consume 5 liters of gasoline, I am not giving him the information he needs. He only wants to know when I will join him at the bar. Or in other words, what my lead time is going to be. What's the morale of measuring lead time instead of story points burned down? In an unclear delivery process, story points will tell you nothing about your ability to deliver or your delivery capacity. The burn down of story points merely indicates your team's capacity to be busy. Story points solely provide you with a theoretical capacity of your team, much like the liters of gasoline in your car. After all, a fuel tank with 50 liters of gasoline won't tell you anything about the cities you will visit with your car. Renatia proposes to measure the capacity of your team based upon a t-shirt sized capacity, where the t-shirt size is a measure of complexity. Based on a comparison with past deliveries, t-shirt sizing is expressed in extra small, small, medium, or large. They express a very short, short, medium, or long lead time. The team's capacity is expressed in the amount of extra small, small, etc. features it can deliver in a sprint, or even on a quarterly basis, being a product increment. Important to note that one medium-sized feature is not equal to small-sized features, nor 4 extra smalls. The qualification of extra small, small, medium, or large refocuses the team on finishing the work, rather than just being busy. This way we revalorize a basic capability of agility. That is the capability to deliver small increments in a predictable time frame. We hope you enjoyed this topic, and invite you to discover other valuable insights that we have built up over time on our blog.